name is Jill Berry Bowen, CEO of Northwestern Medical Center, and your host of the NMC Health Beat Show, dedicated to discussing hot healthcare topics. Today on our show, I'm joined by Katherine Winchester. She is the supervisor of the volunteer services at NMC. And actually, you've been there since January of 2012, and you worked previously at the Visiting Nurse Association in Chittenden County for about 13 years.
Yes.
So we're so happy to have you here to talk about the volunteer services, because I bet there's some folks out there that would love to hear more about, like, what are the duties? What do people do when they volunteer? Because I know we see so many all around, but we may not know exactly what they're doing. So what's it like to be a volunteer?
Sure. Well, we have about 135 active volunteers, and they work in the main hospital building primarily. They work during the business day, typically from about 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. at night, Monday through Friday. And you'll find them at the information desk when you arrive at the hospital, and they're there to help greet patients and visitors and direct them to their appropriate services. We have volunteers in surgical services, in the patient waiting room, in the cafe, greeting people for food services. We also have a Meals on Wheels support program that the volunteers participate in, so you'll find them in the kitchen. And we also have courier services, and those are volunteers that move throughout the building, help deliver patient paperwork, hospital paperwork throughout the departments, and they also support the emergency department and the lab by delivering supplies that come from the emergency department and need to be transported to the lab. So primarily in the main hospital building, you'll find them, and they're identified by their volunteer smocks, and the gentlemen wear vests, and they really do enjoy their work there supporting the hospital activities.
That's awesome. So what do you look for when a volunteer presents and said, I'd like to volunteer? Is there something you're looking for in particular, or any expectations that you would want them to know before they started?
Well, it's a great question. We have volunteers that age from about 16 years old until about 90. So we have
wow.
we have a range of people that are interested in participating. And I think the key for me is when I interact with somebody that's interested, I want to understand what motivates them to be a volunteer. What is bringing them through the door? Did they interact with somebody that said the hospital is a great place to be? Or did they hear about the volunteer program through someone else? Or did they experience the volunteer program as a patient or a visitor and said, I think I'd like to participate in that? So I try and get a sense of what's motivating them to be there, because that's the reason that they're interested, and I want to know a little bit about that. I certainly am looking for enthusiasm, a sense of being a customer service oriented person who likes to be with people. This is not a job for people who like to work quietly somewhere. It tends to be a customer service oriented position. All places are, so you're interacting with people. So I'm interested in learning about whether or not you enjoy helping people, whether that's something that comes naturally to you. And what your goals are in terms of becoming a volunteer. Is it something that you're trying to achieve some requirements in school? You might be a student and you're a senior and you're trying to do some community service for a class. Maybe you are retired and you've relocated to the community from some area. Maybe your family has drawn you here in retirement, or for whatever reason you're just at a point in your life where you'd like to do some community service work and you're interested in volunteering at the hospital. So I kind of look to find out what's bringing people and just learn a little bit about their story, their journey, what takes them to the hospital.
That's great. So do you have to have a set schedule, or can you volunteer an hour or 6 hours, or so how do you make that schedule work with all of those different people?
Yeah, the schedule is a bit of a chess match. It's always moving parts all the time trying to make things work. And the volunteers are there to support different departments in the hospital. So when someone inquires about, well, how does the schedule work and how often do I have to be here? It's really a conversation with that person to find out what role they want to play. So I do have a schedule that I have to make sure is filled for various departments. As I say, about 6 a.m. in the morning is the earliest time a volunteer arrives, and the latest is about 6 or 7 p.m. So the shortest volunteer shift is about an hour, and that is in the Meals and Wheels program. And the longest is in surgical services. We have a shift there that is from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. That can be sometimes managed with 2 volunteers, but sometimes 1. So it's all about finding the right fit and how long the person's interested in being there on a particular day, how many hours they wish to be there engaged, what area that they want to be in. So there's a variety of times that you can participate in a day. And the requirement is not necessarily for me that you be there every single week, but that we find the right fit for you. What's the frequency that you'd like to be there? What are the opportunities that are available? We kind of have 2 different kinds of volunteers, and what I mean by that is someone who's there consistently on the schedule every single week, and then we have substitute volunteers. And the substitute volunteers are not interested in being there every single week. They want to fill in when the regular volunteer has to be elsewhere. They're not able to come in for their shift. And those folks are a tremendous help to the program because people's lives are busy and volunteers have a lot of commitments outside of their hospital time. So there are days when they can't be there. We also have seasonal volunteers, people who travel south to warmer climates during the winter time, and we need to have folks that are available to help fill in. So there's substitute volunteers that come and help with filling in those vacancies. So again, it's trying to find that place, that right fit for you, and there's a variety of ways to do that.
So this has been around for a long time, right? I mean, when I think about the volunteers in the hospital and see them everywhere, I mean, I don't know how we would do this without them. But this program has been established for some time. So how did this all get started?
It's a great question. Dolly McNeil was the original volunteer manager, and she actually held the position for 30 years. I knew
Wow.
It is amazing. Her journey in that process is wonderful. She's a member of the community, and she was approached back in about 1981 by the hospital auxiliary, and they were interested in starting a volunteer program. And so she helped support the hospital with that initiative and was hired part-time. And when she retired, she was a full-time manager. She began with about 3 or 4 people that wanted to help volunteer, and the program grew and evolved over the years. And at present time, it's about 135 people that volunteer. It did begin here at the St. Albans Hospital, and then when the 2 hospitals, Curbs and the St. Albans Hospital, merged back in some years ago, the program then took off from there and has steadily grown and evolved. I had a nice conversation with Dolly to learn a little bit about how did these particular areas that the volunteers support, how did they actually occur? How do these things unfold? Because I kind of walked into a position that had been established and well established, and I've continued to work with the hospital and support the program. And so she shared with me that really it was the hospital management and staff that came to her saying we have needs in these particular areas. So she would work with the right people and start to recruit volunteers, primarily just grassroots, you know, friends that she knew and friends that knew friends and people that it kind of went around that there was this great volunteer program at the hospital and to come check it out. So it grew in that way, and different areas requested support, and so those well-established schedules and support areas are there because of all of that commitment and hard work on all of those people's part to develop the volunteers.
That's what's special about this community. I mean, they just really rally and come together.
They absolutely do, and the volunteers love what they do. They are there to serve, to support, to help their friends, their family, their neighbors. They love the hospital. They engage with their hearts, with their minds, with their feet, and they are very committed. Sometimes when they can't be there, they apologize and say, "I'm so sorry I can't be there today. I will miss my shift, but I'll be there next week." So they really do love being a part of that experience.
Yeah, their dedication is just truly amazing.
It is. It's inspiring, and I'm
is.
proud to be a part of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned the word auxiliary.
Yes.
So what's the difference between being a volunteer and then being a part of the auxiliary?
Yes, it's a great question. A lot of people ask that when they interview or see the hospital has an auxiliary and also a volunteer program. They are woven together, but they are independent. So the hospital auxiliary is there to support the mission of the hospital through fundraising and positive community relations. And they have various initiatives, some of which people in the community are familiar with. Cardiac Capers, which happens every other year,
yes.
and is supported with the leadership of Helen Biggie and her committee, is a program of the auxiliary. And that is specifically geared towards raising funds to help support the hospital. So the auxiliary is about 340 members, and that group is there to support and be a channel by which the hospital can receive support in their growth and their initiatives. And if you want to volunteer additionally and actually be in the hospital, that's something that you can do. And that's what the volunteer program is about, is anyone that might be an auxiliary member that wants to volunteer is welcome to do that. But it's not a requirement.
Sure.
There's also people that come that are not part of the auxiliary that might be very interested in volunteering, and they're very welcome to do that. So it's not a requirement to be a part of the auxiliary, but it's a function of the auxiliary to have the presence of the volunteer in the hospital on a daily basis, not just behind the scenes, but in front of the scenes. So it's a collaboration of support.
Excellent. So if I want to become a volunteer at the hospital, how do I do that?
There are a couple of ways to do it. The hospital website is one place to go for those that prefer to do an application online. They're welcome to submit that. That gets generated through the computer system and is sent to me, and then I respond to people accordingly. And you can also stop by the information desk and inquire about volunteer services. You can also call the office, and my telephone number is 524-1055, and you can inquire about volunteer services. We would arrange an interview for you to come in, and I would explain the details of the process, provide you an application and some of the details for moving through. It's a fairly extensive process. It's not a quick thing. It takes some weeks and some months to actually get involved. There's some orientation requirements and some health requirements that are necessary for being in the hospital environment for safety and well-being. All participants are required to have a TB test for tuberculosis, and that surprises some people that there's so many details that are required for becoming a volunteer, but it's all for the well-being and safety of the hospital. We want to be sure that folks are in good standing and healthy and well enough to be there to support the community. But those that do find that it's worth the effort stay and are involved for a long time.
That's great. Well, we're getting close to our time, but do you have a quick story that comes to mind that we could wrap our time up?
Yeah, I do. I was thinking about that earlier as I was preparing for this time with you, and I was thinking about a pastoral care volunteer that did something extraordinary that just kind of made my heart beat a little bit harder. Her name is Charlene, and she's a pastoral care volunteer, and the pastoral care volunteers go into the patient rooms and make visits to support people from the spiritual aspect of the well-being of the patient. And a number of months ago, she went into a patient room who was actively dying, and apparently she learned that there was no family in the area, and that really saddened her. And she noticed that the patient didn't really have anything necessarily to comfort her. So she decided to go to our auxiliary gift shop and purchase a large teddy bear, a lavender teddy bear, and brought it to the nurse's station and asked if it was okay if she give it to the patient. And so she went into the room and gave the patient, and the patient grabbed it and, to the best of their ability, held it tight and held on to that bear until a few days later when they passed away. And I was very moved by that gesture that she made of spending her own money and wanting to offer some comfort to a patient that was in the dying process. And it meant a lot, I think, spiritually to the person. They may not have been able to verbally say anything, but I think they received it in the way it was intended, which was love and compassion. And I think that's what all the volunteers do, is they are about love and compassion, and they illustrate that daily.
Well, that was certainly a powerful story to end on. So, Katherine, thank you so much for sharing information about volunteering at the hospital. I can't imagine anyone not wanting to be a part of your program. So it's so inspiring, and it's such a wonderful way to give back and make a difference in someone's life. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's my joy and my pleasure.
This is Jill Berry Bowen, CEO of Northwestern Medical Center, and thank you for joining us for this program.